Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. In discussing Guru issues within the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, we may wonder, why is there so much Guru issues anyway? Why is there so much distrust of ISKCON gurus? Give the guys a break, you could say. It has its roots in history, in the short history of ISKCON, particularly in what is known as the Zonal Acarya era. It was a period in ISKCON's history shortly after the disappearance of Srila Prabhupada. We can say approximately 1978, and then approximately 1 decade to about, 86, with multiple guru fall downs. Really, things became unhinged, and then around 1987, and Guru Reform Movement, 1989, approximately a decade. It's known as the Zonal Acharya era. Distrust of ISKCON gurus would almost certainly not have been to the same extent that it is if the gurus, especially the original 11, had lived up to what was expected of them. Distrust wasn't the norm at the beginning. It was great trust was placed in them. The distrust was earned, if you like. It was a very tough period. It started off with a lot of hope. I'm speaking from my own personal experience, having lived through that period. And there were thousands of others who had it badly, and I didn't have it so badly, because a lot of the time during that time I was in Bangladesh and other places, cut off from the big bad world all around us. So in those days of little, even local communication, what to speak of international telecommunication, I didn't know a lot of what was going on, and the assigned guru in our area, His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj, didn't fall down. So that may sound a very gross way of putting it, but it does make a lot of difference. There is a book which has been written about that, and there may be more written. It's by Henry Doktorsky. The name of the book is 11 Naked Emperors. I've read the book. Henry Doktorsky was at one point known as Hrishikesh Das, a disciple of Kirtanananda Swami. So he also lived through it. He's written the book in a manner which is trying to be fair, but at the same time it is influenced by his adherence to the Ritvik doctrine, which obviously I don't believe in. It's not really necessary for everyone to know about it. It's not really necessary for everyone in the movement today to even know all the details of what went on in the Zonal Acharya era. We can know that it was a very rough period in ISKCON's history, just after the departure of Srila Prabhupada. Thousands of devotees, literally thousands of devotees. Remember, every devotee, we bring in, as Srila Prabhupada said, spending gallons of blood, all the hard work of devotees to bring others in. Disciples of Srila Prabhupada and disciples of disciples of Srila Prabhupada left because they had faith that their gurus, the Zonal Acaryas, were presented as pure devotees of Krishna, but it became clear after some time that they were conditioned souls. At least that became very clear for those who fell down, and those who had put their complete faith in those gurus, they were just shattered at heart, and some became very bitter. Some picked up the pieces and went on in ISKCON. Not that many. Many went away from ISKCON altogether to different Gauriya movements. Many remained devotees at some level. But as I discussed in my series of talks called Why is ISKCON So Wishy-Washy, although the Zonal Acharya fiasco was a major element in the difficulties that ISKCON faced after the disappearance of Srila Prabhupada, there were other major factors at work also, such as the fact that devotees, they were in the age bracket when they were not going to, well, they were going to get married. And not everyone can remain in that intense monastic mood all their life. So that's one thing. And then we didn't have any system in place to keep the devotees in. And there were so many factors involved. I discussed that. But anyway, the Zonal Acharya movement, this era, I'm going to discuss it. I'm going to try and do it in a level-headed way. I also, from that time, it definitely affects your psyche, and it's difficult to put the same trust in the institution. I remember after being in Mayapur during the Mayapur festival, before which was the GBC meetings, and it was said that such and such a guru could be reinstated and initiate if he's, more or less the resolution is, if he's not found out having homosexual relationships within the next 6 months. And I remember going back to Bangladesh, and I couldn't sleep at night, because during the day I'd be busy, but at night I'd be waking up again and say, what's going on? I'm in a movement which is promoting actively homosexual person as a pure devotee and guru. So it was a watershed for me and for so many others who had dedicated their lives, and the faith was shattered in many cases. And Srila Prabhupada gave the analogy that once a China vessel is broken, you can't put it together. You can maybe put it together, but it'll never be the same beauty and symmetry. It won't look the same if you can put it together at all. Okay, let's go through the history. If you don't want to listen to it, you don't have. If you don't know about it, it won't affect your Krishna consciousness. But you should know that out of this came the Ritvik heresy, and then so many devotees went away to Gauriya Math Gurus and Radha Kund Babajis and so on, and this and that. It has affected the whole course of religious history. Anyway, in 1978, the GBC, the governing body of ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, they appointed 11 men as successors to Srila Prabhupada to initiate, and the idea was that they're successors of Srila Prabhupada, and the idea was that they will be just like Prabhupada. They're going to be gurus. Well, guru means just like Prabhupada, right? So, first-class fanfare, huge airport greetings, treating Srila Prabhupada with the same respect. and all the original 11 were given honorific titles, just like Srila Prabhupada was given the title Prabhupada. So we had names like Tirthapad, Acharya Dev. That's banned that's banned now by edict in ISKCON, by GBC law, to have such titles. As is foot washing of the Guru more than once a year. Actually, this is all according to Shastra. Hari Bhakti Vilas states that the Guru should be addressed with such a title. And according to tradition, it's there. Maybe we've swung too much the other way. Anyway, the original 11, I'll give the names. You can listen, and many of the devotees may not have even heard of many of the names here. There were such huge figures in ISKCON. So much looked up to. And just see how, in course of time, things can change so much. These 11 were so much revered. Their names, I'll give with their honorific titles. Jayatirtha Das, Srila Tirthapad, Hamsaduta, Swami Krishna Kirtan Thakur, Hridayananda Goswami, Srila Acharya Dev, Jayapataka Swami, Srila Acharya Pad, Rameshvara Swami, who from very much the beginning, he didn't want to go along with all of this, but by pressure from others he was forced to, but he never accepted an honorific title. Bhagawan, originally when he was Grihasta, and then he took sannyas, Srila Guru Dev, Kirtanananda Swami, Srila Bhakti Pad, Tamal Krishna Goswami, Srila Guru Dev, Satswarup Das Goswami, Srila Guru Pad, Bhavananda Goswami, Srila Vishnu Pad, and Harikesh Swami, Sri Vishnu Pad. So there are two Vishnu Pads. One was Srila Vishnu Pad, and the other was Sri Vishnu Pad. These 11, actually, their names had been chosen by Srila Prabhupada to represent him as proxy initiators in his presence. And I do remember I was in England at the time when Jayatirtha Das Adhikari came back from being with Srila Prabhupada and the GBC members in Vrindavan, and stated, among other things, that Srila Prabhupada had said that 11 would be initiating at the present time, with the understanding that after Srila Prabhupada passes, they will be initiating. As Srila Prabhupada said, there will be regular guru, and the disciples will be disciple of my disciple, Srila Prabhupada said, which I personally felt that, whoa, and probably everyone felt that. That's a big thing, to be a guru. Generally we speak of the 11 acharyas, but the number did fluctuate from 1982 on. Yeah, so from 1978 they started to initiate, but problems started to come up quite soon. The number fluctuated. In 1982, the GBC expelled Jayatirtha, who had taken sannyas. He expelled him from ISKCON. He'd already left anyway. And then they brought in 3 new gurus, because there was pressure practically from the beginning that you have to open up. It can't just be 11. So 3 more were added in 1982. Gopal Krishna Goswami, who was given the title Srila Bhagavat Pad. Pancha Dravira Swami, who was given the title Srila Tridandi Pad, and Bhakti Swarup Damodar Swami, who was given the title Srila Sripad. So under pressure, well, actually what happened, there was an Acharya board who practically dominated the GBC. Whatever they said, the 11 gurus, the others had to follow. Which also, it took away the authority of the GBC against Srila Prabhupada's order. So under pressure from others, they let some others, actually there's pressure for that many more should initiate, but they just let 3 in, and it was hoped that more, it would open up the doors, but it didn't. It still remained pretty closed. Then in 1983, Hans Adutta pretty much blooped, and he was out. He couldn't remain in the position of a guru due to his quite unfit behavior at the time. And then in 1985, 4 more were added. Bhakti Tirtha Swami, who took the title Srila Krishnapad, and then the other 3 didn't take honorific titles: Agrani Swami, Gaur-Govinda Swami, and Jagadish Goswami. It was presumed that these are all pure devotees on the level of Prabhupada, and it seems they presumed themselves to be like that because they were very insistent that that understanding, and only that understanding, be allowed within ISKCON. They were like emperor or kings ruling their own zones, their own geographic regions. With the rule was, if you join in a certain area, if you join in such and such a place, you're in someone's zone, and whoever is the guru, you have to become that person's disciple. You have no choice. They were worshipped as good as God, and there was no question of criticizing them or calling that into question. It was they're on the level of Prabhupada. They're pure devotees. They're associates of Lord Chaitanya. They're came from the spiritual world directly. That was considered. We sing daily, Shiradhika Madhavayor Apara Nikunja Yuno Rati Keli Siddhai. It was presumed that these gurus, they're all on the highest platform of devotional service. It was considered that, well, they're gurus, so they must be on the level of Prabhupada. The expectations were very high, maybe unrealistically. Guru, first of all, he sees himself as a servant of his guru. I don't think any of the 11 or whatever the number was considered themselves anything else but that. But it became overshadowed by the need to show oneself to be on the level of Prabhupada, which is unrealistic. We expected. I can say also, I also went along with it, as did most of the members of ISKCON. I said, yeah, okay. That's what the GBC said, and the GBC, they must be right, and okay, we're going along with it. I didn't really question it. The questioning came up later. Some questioned at the very beginning, but they were crushed, unfortunately. And it became mandatory to believe that the gurus are on the highest level. And the original 11, they thought they could pull it off, and so did others. It didn't seem to be that difficult. Prabhupada said, do as I am doing. There was a great wave of Krishna consciousness coming up with the energy that Srila Prabhupada had given to this movement, and things were just beginning to pick up when Srila Prabhupada left, and the movement carried on with that momentum, and the 11 thought they could do it. What do? Do as I'm doing, Prabhupada says. So push book distribution, get farms, recruit devotees, go on preaching. It seems pretty easy, but to have the same spiritual potency of Srila Prabhupada is, you just can't get it by rubber stamping someone a guru. Someone can act as a guru, but not necessarily on the level of Srila Prabhupada. It's such a high-level Mahabhagavat is very rare. And it's not so easy to withstand Maya, to take the pressure of having so many disciples. There's also the karmic load of those disciples who go away, and the pressure to always be perfect, to appear perfect, and to answer questions, to satisfy people philosophically. Remember, these devotees, many of them were not even 30 years old. Most of them, well, none of them had been in the movement more than 12 years. Most of them less than 10 years. Foolishness of youth, maybe. When you start to think, I am Sakshad Hari, you must bow down to me, then problems begin. And it was preached within the movement that every disciple of Srila Prabhupada who's not a guru, that means all but 11 or so, has to be under one of these acharyas, as they were known, particularly, Tamal Krishna Maharaj made this into a whole philosophy at one point, is that the whole movement they have to come through him. They got carried away. If you're not under, if you have to be under one of your god brothers, and if you're not, you don't have any connection to Prabhupada. Your connection with Prabhupada is now through the 11 acharyas. And so the gurus had to present themselves as something they were not, and it was, in retrospect, now we have the wisdom of age and of being able to look back, but at that time we didn't. And within a short time, most of them crumbled, the 11, and they crumbled and fell down, illicit sex, intoxication. It was scandalous. In some cases, in at least 2 cases, there were illegal criminal activities. And those who, it was natural as the cracks in their persona became obvious or more apparent, that some especially among their god brothers, remember these god brothers had been serving side by side with the acharyas. All of a sudden the acharyas are promoted onto a level so much higher. So it was difficult for some of the god brothers to accept that. Hey, we joined together. I remember going out on Sankirtan book distribution with you. I remember this, that. It's hard to accept that they're all of a sudden going up there. Although at the same time, you should remember these 11, they were leaders who Srila Prabhupada had recognized. He had put a lot of energy into training them more than others. So they were in ISKCON at the time special devotees, which is why Prabhupada chose them. He didn't choose me. But those who did criticize or start to point out, hey, there's something wrong here, something wrong is going on, this is not proper, they were mistreated. Often they were, you couldn't remain in an ISKCON center. You couldn't remain as a devotee in good standing if you pointed out there's something wrong. Physical beating was there, and in one case, assassination, murder. Many just left ISKCON, and there are reports of one or two who just couldn't handle it and they committed suicide. Heavy stuff, very, very, very heavy stuff. The first time I became aware of this is when one of my godbrothers in Mayapur, I think I was visiting from Bangladesh. I used to go to Mayapur from time to time, and one godbrother who I'd been quite close with, and he left shortly after that, and he spoke very frankly to me. I was quite surprised, but at the same time I did take him seriously because I respected him as a serious devotee, and he was having so much difficulty. I was surprised he spoke to me like this. Maybe he did because I wasn't living in Mayapur. He said, "I know so-and-so is not a pure devotee. He was in the Gurukul. I have to give these boys for initiation to him. But I know he's not a pure devotee." He said it was really heart-wrenching for him. And he left shortly afterwards, and then he's had quite a colorful history of going here and there in Krishna consciousness, in alternatives to not only to our line coming from Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, well, you could say in more Bengal-specific traditional Vaishnavism. One quote which is often quoted in regard to this whole era is from Srila Prabhupada's purport to Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 28, Text 48. I'll read an extract from that. Srila Prabhupada wrote, "Unfortunately, when the Acarya disappears, rogues and non-devotees take advantage and immediately begin to introduce unauthorized principles." Of course, the term unauthorized principles, it could be a very wide range, and it's not very specific. An unauthorized principle, an unauthorized principle was to promote by edict 11 persons up to the stature of pure devotees. So, continuing from this purport, the Acharya, the authorized representative of the Supreme Lord, establishes these principles, but when he disappears, things once again become disordered. So it was like a prediction of what was to happen after Srila Prabhupada left. But to be fair, it's not that, as some claim, that the gurus at that time, or at the present time, some say they're all just bad and wrongly motivated. They were devotees. They were dear to Srila Prabhupada. They had positive motives also. It got mixed up, no doubt, with some personal ambition or whatever. But there was a lot of, actually it was a tremendous time in the history of ISKCON in one way. As I said, there's a tremendous momentum that Srila Prabhupada had built up, and that was carried forward by the 11, and ISKCON expanded amazingly. So many people became devotees. The movement spread very widely to many countries where it hadn't been before. Most of the countries in Europe, we didn't have any centers at all. There was no Krishna consciousness movement in most of the countries in Europe when Srila Prabhupada left. I was in pioneering service during that decade in Bangladesh, Thailand, Malaysia, Burma, these 4 places. And there were so many devotees going all over the place, expanding the movement. A tremendous number of books were translated in different languages, and huge numbers of books were distributed. And there were so many tremendous kirtans going on. Deities installed, prasadam distributed, and so many devotees that they went away in disappointment, so many, but the disappointment was because they were having such a good time in Krishna consciousness, but it was all based on faith in their guru, and the basis of it was taken away. Otherwise, there are many good things going on. So yeah, tremendous feasts, massive prasad distribution, festivals, Rath Yatras, the annual pilgrimage to Mayapur became, there used to be a few hundred devotees coming, and then it went up to thousands and thousands. And we all felt we're part of a great worldwide movement as Prabhupada wanted it. And of course it wasn't just the 11 gurus who were doing it, but it was a joint effort, as it is up to the present time. Everyone who partook, they all made their contribution. But there was this feeling we're saving the world. There was the same feeling we had when Srila Prabhupada was here. We're saving the world. We're going to take over the world with Krishna consciousness. And yeah, we can remember the saying. It's not a saying from Shastra, but it's widely accepted as an axiom that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. But that statement is not absolutely true because, well, first of all, the only person with absolute power is Krishna. But even temporarily, or religiously, those who have absolute power, they don't all become corrupt, just like Srila Prabhupada had tremendous power over his disciples, but he didn't become corrupt. But if there is a little tendency for lording it over others, exploiting, manipulating, then generally power, if someone gets in power, that bad tendency can come out. And yeah, they're young men, and of course they're supposed to be Brahmins and know the philosophy, but they'd come out of a hedonistic hippie life, most of them. And anyway, hippie or non-hippie, they're all Westerners, and they all came out of a very bad culture. And they hadn't been practicing Krishna consciousness very long, and it must have been a strain for them also to all of a sudden, boom, now I've got to be a pure devotee. And Rameshwar was the only one who almost from the beginning said, hey, can we just be more realistic about this? But as I say, he wasn't allowed to. Because there was this idea that, yeah, we've got to keep we need this to keep the movement going on. It was very high expectations, and how could you live up to that? They were expected to be just like Prabhupada. How can you do it? It's easy to point the finger, but for the grace of God go I, or any one of us. It's extremely unfortunate that we went through this. And some of the same symptoms are still going on. You can't legislate perfection by any amount of laws, even by the GBC. You just can't sign Maya out of existence. And it's unsurprising if Maya especially attacks from the top. Those leaders who have taken the heavy burden of leading this movement And you may say, well, they're doing it, they just want to control others. You can say like that, but at least in my experience, I can say subjectively, I know many of the leaders of the Krishna conscious movement. It's not that they're just all conniving, scheming rogues, as some would like to think, but they want to serve Srila Prabhupada and his mission, and that's why they're in it. So it's unsurprising if those who are looked up to others, if Maya gets one of them, then automatically the faith of so many others will be compromised. If you make one big leader shake or fall, then so many others will shake or fall. So we can request those who are very harsh critics of ISKCON gurus to be little bit kind. It's not easy to follow directly after Srila Prabhupada, and the gurus are doing what they can. In a harsh world, gurus have to deal with people who have very disturbed minds. In Kali Yuga, the main symptom is, above all, people's minds are very disturbed. The gurus themselves may be following strictly, sincerely, but also the influence of Kali is there. The influence of Bhakti Saraswati Thakur said that the influence of Kali Yuga, it's the main thing which is causing us so many problems. Pushing back against Maya is not easy, and Maya goes into overdrive against those who are heading the charge. So yeah, it was a very bad era, and then so many fall downs, and so much distrust was generated, and that distrust continues, not with everyone, but it's pervading enough that it should be discussed and thought about. And in the upcoming talks, I plan to speak more about that, and there may be good reasons for that distrust if those who have taken the high position and the heavy responsibility of being gurus don't themselves act in the most ideal way. There's much to talk about still. Guru issues is a big topic, but for now I will not speak on this any longer. I've just briefly spoken about the Zonal Acarya era. There are so many things more could be said, but just giving a little overview so that people who are interested in this can have a little understanding of the background history. And again, if you're happy in Krishna conscious, you're happy with your guru, you're happy chanting, please be happy. That's really all that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came. That's the essence of all that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give us. Chant Hare Krishna and be happy, as Srila Prabhupada often said. So be happy, but don't be foolish also. Keep our intelligence open and alive also, and don't be misled by untruth posing in the name of truth. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Dante nitaya chunakang padiyo nipatya kritva chakakushatameta daham bravimi he sadhava sakala eva vihaya durat Gauranga Chandra Charane Kurutanuragaha Parivadatu Jano Yata Tatava Nanomokarona Vayang Vicharayamaha Hari rasa madira madati mata bhuvi vilutama nartama nirvishama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama.